So what I'm certainly seeing, particularly over the last 10 years, is quite a significant investment in the thing called resilience, and it's coming to the fore. A lot of research is telling us that the concept of how we build and grow resilience is actually very real. So some of you may have heard of the term IQ, the intellectual quota, and that's around our technical competence. A lot of our training is done around our technical qualifications and process. We then moved into, probably about 15 years, the area of EQ, the emotional quota. So that's how we relate to one another, how we get along, and how we influence. And we've certainly seen some movement towards that, how we influence, how we navigate relationships, how we get along with one another, which is equally important as the IQ, the technical competence. What we've seen in the last probably 5 years is a move also towards RQ, the resilience quota. And by that, what I mean is we can certainly have companies and individuals that have the intellectual knowledge, develop really good relationships, so the EQ knowledge, but not necessarily develop the RQ, the ability to bounce back, the ability to manage different circumstances, the ability to manage the environmental context, which is exactly what we're seeing now. So I like to describe resilience as the ability to move through and navigate life. Being able to, at times, survive. Resilience can be about survival, which is what many of us are doing at the moment, and that's okay. But we don't want to stay in survival for too long. So the ability then to thrive, and how do we do that, and how do we develop that, which over the series of the webinars we will talk about. But I do like to start with the hallmarks of what resilience is. And I do like to draw on the work that Dr. Lucy Horn has done. Now, Lucy is a New Zealander, a psychologist, and works specifically with the Christchurch Rebuild team. And she looks at the 3 hallmarks of resilience. The first one being that resilient people and resilient organisation and resilient cultures understand that stuff happens, that things will happen to us in our life that we don't always control, like what's happening in the world today with the COVID-19 virus. So understanding that for all of us, stuff will happen. We're not special in that aspect, that in my life, and I'm sure in yours, there's things that we will be extremely proud of and go well, but there'll also be some things and times really that are quite tough. So understanding and accepting that in our life, that happens. Second hallmark she looks at around resilience people are they focus on what they can control. So understanding that, again, there'll be things that are outside of our control, not avoiding them, understanding that they can be painful, they can generate anxiety, they can be tough, and then focus on, right, what can I now do about this? Whilst being aware of there are also some things that are going on around us that we are doing well. So the small things that matter around us that are little steps are really important. So focus on what we can control. And the third thing she asks is what I'm doing and how I am behaving helping or harming me? Really, really good question. Is what I am doing or thinking or behaving helping or harming me? So if you think of those as the 3 hallmarks of resilience, it's a great place to start. Now, we have had a lot of institutions like Harvard, MIT, Oxford, Auckland University, and the Dunedin Otago University do a lot of studies on this thing called resilience. And what they have found is that sadly we don't train in resilience. We're very good at training on the technical aspects, but actually training in resilience, we haven't placed a lot of emphasis on. So the Dunedin study, which is a longitudinal study that looks at well-being and health, have put forward some really strong arguments about how we learn resilience. And what their studies show is we predominantly learn it at a young age. So here I am, this youngster, and I'm observing my whānau, my culture, my religion, my wider community, and I'm picking up all these cues around what resilience is. How do I do joy? How do I do happiness? How do I make sense of the world? how do we communicate? And I bring a lot of those traits and behaviors with me into adulthood. The great thing that the studies show, though, is that we can learn and redevelop our resilience traits, but we just need to spend some time on it and understand what builds and what reduces our resilience. And for all of us, there are a couple of main factors that will actually impact our resilience. And one of the main factors is change. And of course, in the world today, we're experiencing a lot of change. Yeah. Now, if I feel that the change is not beneficial or change that I do not think is useful, then the way that my brain and the way that my body, my hormones and my neurochemicals respond is very different to the way that my brain and my neurochemicals will respond that if I initiate the change or if I feel the change is good. So change plays a big factor in our resilience, and my resilience will take a hit if I am in a change process that I don't like, I don't agree with, or I feel I have no control over. So again, in today's environment, there's no wonder that many of us are feeling a bit anxious, a bit scared, a bit frustrated, disappointment. Real emotions, and it's okay to acknowledge those. And then referring back to Lucy Horn's work, go, what can I now do about this? So understanding the change that's gone around us and how we are viewing that very much impacts our resilience. Then the concept of stress. Now, what stresses me might not stress you. That's okay, yeah? What stressed me last week might not stress me this week. So again, it's really important to understand what are our stress triggers and how do I respond to those stress triggers. So the thing about stress and the thing about change and the thing about resilience is it's very fluid. So as the world has been turned on its head in the last couple of months, what stressed me a couple of months ago might feel really small given today's environment. So that's the whole dynamic and fluidity of resilience and change and stress. So knowing yourself, knowing your set points, stopping without judgment and going, how am I tracking? How am I traveling? Really important. And I believe we're not very good at doing that. Most of us will really only go and see a physician or a doctor when we're unwell. Happens. So this is about trying to bring it to the fore and saying, well, how can I start to put me at the center of this and go, how am I traveling? Do I know what change is going on around me? Do I know what feelings I'm having around this? Do I know what stresses me? Do I know how I can navigate that stress? And then endeavoring to focus on what you can focus on. And we'll cover the concept of managing the brain when we come to the next few webinars. So in closing, a couple of tips I would say is knowing you, understanding and stopping and giving yourself a break, not being hard on yourself and making sense of, look, this is what's happening around me at the moment. No judgment, understanding your stress trigger points, and then starting to focus on what you can control. And we will talk about that in more detail. But some really simple things you can do is bring a health check forward. So get a yearly health check. Understand how your blood pressure is looking, your cholesterol, just your overall health will give an indicator of stress mechanisms that we can notice from a health point, and small little goals matter. So don't think you necessarily have to go from A to Z. It can be moving from A, small step to B, small step to C. And in the next webinar, we will talk about micro habits. So hopefully what I've given you is just an understanding of this concept of resilience, how it manifests, what are some great things we can do around that, and give us some questions to think about into the next.